I got a first edition of that, but I couldn't get a first edition of the main book, because I think that was just published privately. But that's a beautiful book, Lawrence of Arabia. I often pick it up now. We studied David Copperfield, Dickens' David Copperfield, when I was at Adelaide Tech. And I keep a copy of that very close, and you can pick it up, and the language is so beautiful. And I worry about my grandchildren. They don't know about tenses and mood. They don't know about the indicative mood, the subjunctive mood, the imperative mood. They don't recognise the gerund, but when the present participle is used in its possessive sense, and the newspapers don't. So I encourage my grandchildren to do a foreign language, and then you have to learn a bit of grammar.
Yes.
We in one of the camps we were in Java, Russell Piggott, captain, 2nd 40th, 30s. Is he still alive, I wonder?
I don't know.
I doubt if he is. We got hold of a copy of Lady Chatterley's Lover, and Piggott used to read one chapter a night. You know, Mellors, the gardener for Lady Chatterley.
Now, when did you, in your POW life on Java, which camps were you actually in? How many?
About 12, I think.
Really?
Yeah. I gave a list of them. They used to shift us seemingly for no reason. I suspect the reason was that they didn't want us to get familiar with the with the local surroundings or the locals. It was in places like Tanjong Priok, Cycle Camp 4 times, Glodok, the string factory, in Jamahi, and one of your website people wanted to know about Jamahi.
The Dutchman.
And I tried to tell them as much as I could.
Well, I'm sure you did. Did you see his response?
Yeah. That's where Max Brown took a typewriter to pieces. And I can still see him. He stood outside our main gate, and he sat outside our main gate, and between us and the Jap commandant's house. And he had this typewriter in pieces, and he could never have, they made him try to put it together again. He could never have done it. And then we got shifted out. Jamahi, and Bandung at Lansop, and LOG, Jamahi. We were up there once with another family and drove past and around Jamahi, and it's a political prison, and the guards were as intrusive on us as the Japs had been when we were prisoners there. But that was an interesting place because the drains used to run through the camp, and we'd put sieves there to catch the tobacco. It was floating around in the street drain. The other thing that used to happen there, the Ambonese, they're marvellous people, the Ambonese, and there were a lot of them in Jamahi at one stage, and their women used to come in. They'd come in the drains overnight. The drains were pretty ripe, I tell you, and just bring in food to their men. You know, the Ambonese are a bit like the Nepalese, the Gurkhas in the British Army.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have migrated back to Holland because they're mostly Roman Catholic, which is a little bit of an enclave in an essentially Islamic country like Indonesia. They.
When did you catch up with the members of Black Force who'd been captured there, like the 2nd, 3rd machine gunners and 2nd pioneers and the 2nd, 4th casualty clearing staff?
Yeah, I think that was probably after we moved out of moved into cycle camp for the first time. I don't think there were any of that force in down on the down in the wharf. I think they were all in cycle camp, and the survivors from the Perth.
I was going to ask about the Perth and Houston survivors.
Yeah. Don't remember the names of too many of them. There was a Lieutenant White, and for some reason or other, all whites are called Knocker. And I think he died finally in Western Australia, Knocker White. I think he became a captain in the Royal Australian Navy. There was another English.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were saying when you said lieutenant. I thought surely you meant a lieutenant.
Yeah.
Isn't that what the Navy call them?
Yeah, they do.
Lieutenant?
Yeah, lieutenant.
Anyway, I'm sorry to have that interjection.
They got a photograph taken 6 weeks after the end of the war, just when Lady Mountbatten found us. And you can see on the photograph here, because we had to have our heads shaved.
Yes.
And you weren't allowed to have the the pinch test. If you got the pinch test, the Japs had built you up. Actually, it was a good idea because we were lousy with lice and scabies is the worst thing. For some reason or other, we often used to get scabies in cycle camp. And I think the Japs were frightened that we might give it to them because they allowed us to get flowers of sulphur. And you put this, sulphur stuff all over you. You get it here, and terrible. Scabies lay their eggs and they hatch under your skin, and the grubs then crawl around eating their way out. It's a terrible thing.
That's right.
But flowers of sulphur fixes them up.
The Jap camp commander, was it Murray?
One of them.
Maury or Murray?
Murray.
Yes. Now,
Sergeant Major Murray.
So you were in his camp?
Oh yeah.
And was that the same camp that Vanderpost was in?
Yes, we were in many of the same camps with Vanderpost. Murray went. He was a sergeant major. He went to the around Ambon, Halmahera, was it? They're building airstrips, and they treated them absolutely abominably. There were two of them, Murray and Kasiyama, and they came back into cycle camp with the remnants of this force. They were the walking dead. Walking Dead.
Were they the ones that Lears had to do that stretching of their tendons in their legs?
Yeah. They were something dreadful. But Kasiyama and Murray were all right. Now most of those people that came back from the Halmaheras died. I don't know the casualty rate. The casualty rate probably was not as bad as the Sandakan to Renau death marches, but it was bad. And Murray was then, and Kasiyama were then in charge. Well, I don't know about in charge. The fellow in charge was a bloke called Anami. He was a colonel, bug whiskers. And I got a photograph of him here with bug whiskers, Murray and Kasiyama. I don't have a photograph of Sonny. They were all executed in July of 1946 in Jakarta, all except Kasiyama. And why Kasiyama wasn't executed, I'm not too sure, but I think it's because he was a civilian interpreter. But Murray and Sonny and Naomi all were executed. Murray was absolutely mad.